Hi everyone, I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and tonight I have a fascinating guest. His name is George Webb, or at least that's his internet name. I think it's part of his whole name. And he's doing a very interesting project on YouTube that someone brought to my attention. Very glad that they did. So I've gotten in touch with him, and he's here with me tonight. And we do have him on the phone, so we won't be able to see his face, but I'm going to show you his, his face on the banner here, and I'll just put that up as I'm talking, so that you can, see more or less who's talking. And let's see, George, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, you're a little quiet, so I don't know if you have volume at your end. I'm going to turn you up over here a little bit and see if that helps. So we've got a number of viewers already, and I'm sure they're going to start showing up, as the show progresses. So, and people get the heads up that we are going live now. So it is a wonderful project that you're doing, and it does touch a lot of areas that I have researched and that people, of course, follow Camelot know about, and connecting the dots in some of the areas where perhaps they don't know all that much about. And so welcome.
It's just great to be on your show, and I watched a couple of your videos. I haven't been on your show, a subscriber before, but I am now.
Okay, well, that's good. 3 brownie points for that. And no, it's great when people will subscribe, because obviously, that looks good, makes us look good on YouTube, and we're always trying to get more and more people to pay attention to what we're doing. Obviously, that's what it's all for. It's for the people. So your investigations began with what appeared to be the missing CEO of the Clinton Foundation, Braverman, and it does appear that someone at least tweeted that he was, I guess, alive and well or something, sometime not that long ago. And I wonder if you could go over the saga of how this whole thing kind of came to be, and how you landed on doing this wonderful, I forget the name of the software program you're using, but talk about that as well.
Well, so that's a recent development. I started, we all lived through the election of 2016, and we remember the DNC leaks and Seth Rich, dying mysteriously, and then so the 3 founders of WikiLeaks all kind of dying in a row, and then all the Podesta emails coming out. And we were looking to see if Braverman, this ex-CEO, there was an article written on the 23rd or so of October, when the last WikiLeaks guy died. There was this article that came out and said the secret to the Clinton Foundation unlocking the whole story is this Eric Braverman. And the next day, after Gavin McFadden died, who is kind of the founder of WikiLeaks in London, there was a story that he ran to the Russian consulate in New York. And it was kind of one of those alternate media, wasn't really covered in who knew if it was true or not. Well, I really wasn't, it was an interesting story, but I really didn't go anywhere with it. But then on the 2nd of November, a story came out in True Pundit. I don't know if you remember, but the story broke about the 650,000 emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop broke.
Right.
And the police chief, a guy named Boyce, Robert Boyce, is 40-year. He's kind of the gruff voice of, NYPD. He's the big media name, chief of detectives, 40 years on the NYPD. He came out and said, hey, on this server, there's about 500,000 classified emails out of 650,000. There's child exploitation, there's child trafficking, there's pay to play, there's obstruction of justice, there's perjury, there's all these things on this laptop. So that was the True Pundit article. So at that point, I'm like, okay, if this is true, then the CEO is running for a good reason. There's something more to this story. So that's when I start following him. And that was probably about day 8 or 9. So I started the series and I called it, Where is Eric Braverman? And that was about day 8. And I followed him until, just like you mentioned, just until very recently, until about day 89 or 90, when he finally surfaced and he's been announced as the new CEO of Eric Schmidt's from Google, his foundation, the Google Foundation. Now, we haven't seen him. He's supposed to teach tomorrow at Yale. He teaches at the Jackson School of Government in New Haven at Yale. So tomorrow is no one's ever has seen him since that day he went to the embassy. So tomorrow we'll know. So that's kind of what the story in a nutshell. Okay,
so we're right at the cutting edge right here on the show today, which is a lot of fun. So that'll be very interesting, and obviously people are going to have to pay attention to your YouTube channel, among other things, and possibly even some people in the news might have picked up on this sort of discrepancy or whatever it is. Maybe it'll be reported other places. I'm sure you'll be on the story. So we will be very curious whether he does in fact show up in person, and of course in my world, and not a clone. But so as far as you getting into this, your background, I put it on my website. It's not your traditional sort of journalist background. You're more of a software sales guy. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. I'm just a citizen journalist. No journalist training. I went to the Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and one thing we did learn was how to use a library. They would say, okay, here are the 5 courses or 5 companies we're going to analyze. Now go get their annual reports out of the library and come back and tell us what you think we should do for those 5 companies. And you'd have a team of 2 and a team of 4, but you spend all this time in the library and this iterative process of presenting to your small team, and then to the other groups in the class, and then they would give you all kinds of ideas you never thought of, and you go, oh my, what a great idea. And that is the same thing that I put into this open media research. I put out ideas, and then I have this cadre of fantastic researchers that give me ideas and tell me, no, that's not right. If I make a mistake, and it's kind of this great kind of call and response method of doing internet research. It's extremely powerful.
It is, and I have to say that it's great that you use this. Is it called Trulo or something like that? What's the name of the software?
There is a way to storyboard anything called Trello.
Okay.
And if you think of it like solitaire, and you make cards, so you can make cards, could be news articles. And so let's say we're talking about a company where the investigation led to, which is this Dyncorp.
Yep.
Which is a company that is about the 22nd largest defense contractor as far as budget that we know about, but also manages the black budget, the hidden budget, the $6.7 trillion missing in the Department of Defense budget. They manage that budget. And so you can basically put these, it's kind of like pieces of the puzzle. You put the pieces of the puzzle together on this Trello, and then you can kind of, just like you would play solitaire, you match things up, and then eventually the solution kind of comes out.
Right, but it does echo, I did go to UCLA Graduate School of Management executive program. And I did it back in the day when I was trying to get a sort of business piece to complement my my creative side that went into the entertainment industry. And I know that they have these wonderful packages, but they usually cost a huge amount of money that can triangulate relationships. And this is what this reminds me of. In other words, the lines that are drawn between the individuals. And it's a great tool, and it's obviously a tool that's used, that's very sophisticated, that's used by, major corporations, used, I'm sure, by sort of the powers that be, and people. In fact, I'm sure it's part of the AI component that is, in essence, called, I think it's called Main Core. And I wrote an article recently incorporating that link. Have you heard of that?
I haven't, but it sounds a lot like Peter Thiel's Palantir software that draws relationships and is used kind of in, Peter Thiel from PayPal, and now, he spoke at the Republican convention, and similar type of thing that maps these unknown or hidden relationships in order to show, what true relationships are. But I haven't heard the Main Core, no.
Okay, it's actually Main Core, C-O-R-E, I think it is. I'll pull it up. It's in essence, I guess, a precursor to what some people might call maybe Echelon. It's the gigantic servers that were collecting data even in the early days, and so on. I don't even know what it's called now. Maybe it's even part of Mother, which is the nano satellite grid that's got a main location that's kind of like it's like Skynet in the Terminator movie series, but in essence, it's a centralization place. Some people may say it's actually the location, for example, in Utah, that the NSA has taken over and built major server farms and that kind of thing. But at any rate, so
Utah,
yeah. So when they can do this, they can not just know that you're connected to so-and-so, to so-and-so, to so-and-so, but they can know, like what you're doing, which is connecting the dots as to how people are connected and through what organizations and what those organizations may be involved in, and the major players in the organizations. It's just a whole diagram of all of that, and is very useful. Obviously, it's supposed to also, it does hark back to what Promise software was capable of. And then the back doors were actually put in by Michael Riconosciuto, as you may know, and he's in jail and has been in jail for many, many years, up on charges having to do with actually, I guess, drug trafficking of some kind, but he's much more deeply down the rabbit hole than that, and was involved in weapons, sales and biotech, which is the Morongo Indian Reservation and all of that. So I'm assuming that you know your Promise software story well, because you've got it highlighted on in a number of places, and how it links up to maybe Blackwater. And I was going to ask you how Blackwater links up to Dyncorp.
Well, so I pulled up Main Core while you were speaking, and it's a code name, and so that's kind of what threw me. And it kind of started in the 80s, and I see here Rex 84, which was Readiness Exercise 1984, which was started by Ollie North and George Bush in the Reagan administration, which was this: what if the United States revolted? And how would we respond? How would we use the FBI, the CIA, and the armed forces to put down a revolt? So this idea of collecting every piece of information we can to a common location like Bluffdale, Utah right now, that's obviously what this is. So Promise software was an interesting idea because I liken Promise software to help people just understand it. It's kind of like your phone with a banking application on it. And you are going to be able to see maybe 10 different accounts in your banking application on your phone. You're going to be able to see deposits, and you're going to be able to see withdrawals and so forth. But instead of it just being, your personal accounts. What the CIA did was they stole the software. Bill Weld of, in Massachusetts was at the Department of Justice, the guy who was just running for vice president of the Green Party, or the, Libertarian Party. They sold the software to Saudi Arabia, they sold it to Russia, they sold it to Canada, they sold it to MI6, they sold it all over the world, and its promise stood for Prosecutors Management Information System. So basically, what they had was, if there was an investigation, let's say in England, and they were investigating, let's say, the Beatles for tax evasion, the Promise software had a back door in it, so that the CIA could look into what the MI6 was investigating, and then say, oh, they're investigating the Beatles. We can beat them to the punch and go to the Beatles and get a bribe or a kickback from them before MI6 does. We can keep up on the whole world this way through this back door and this Promise software, if that makes sense. Promise was this kind of Trojan horse that they gave all the intelligence, and prosecutors around the world.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
And you have all the, and then the reporter, and I can't remember his name right off the bat, that was killed for reporting this.
Danny Casolaro, I think.
There you go, Danny Casolaro. And a lot of my work follows in the bloody footprints of these dead reporters. But anyway, that was the whole idea behind Promise. Well, the follow-on to that is this Planeteer with this Peter Thiel, the guy who spoke, the gay guy who was with Trump, and he spoke at the Republican convention and so forth. And he's kind of a CIA guy, and he is trying to push this same thing: connections, connect the dots, money, how to solve money laundering problems. For instance, if you're trying to move $100 million, you don't want to move it through just one international transfer, because it's like a elephant going through a python. It's very easy to see. So what they do is they shard it into 10 different transactions, 10 different $10 million ones, and through 10 different banks. Well, that's something that Planeteer could pick up right off the bat. But so local law enforcement uses this, state law enforcement, federal investigative agencies. There's about 30 federal agencies that have investigative agencies. They're all using this. Well, it's the same thing again. There's a backdoor built into these things so that the CIA can look, and Dyncorp can look right in. Dyncorp manages all this. They have the federal contract for managing all this.
Okay, you're saying that Dyncorp links to, I believe that the pronunciation is Palantir, correct?
Palantir. Sometimes I say Planeteer. Palantir is correct.
Yeah, I could have been called Planeteer for what it's really doing, but and Snowden on a recent interview that he did, it was a roundtable really with Noam Chomsky and I guess it was the journalist who's uncovered the whole Snowden thing. Snowden mentions Palantir on this thing, and he's doing that a few times, talking about it being sort of the next step from PRISM, what was called PRISM, if you recall. And I have that highlighted. I actually am going to put that on the screen here. There's a chart that shows, the various companies, and I wrote an article about this, but people can look at that article if you are interested while you're sort of, and I put a picture of a goldfish bowl, because this is really what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a deep state kind of situation and a surveillance state, which is in essence what all these softwares are working towards. And in essence, they have become an AI. Now, calling them by separate names is kind of an interesting way to go. I see that you sold software. Do you have any background or have you done any investigations that involve the artificial intelligence linked to all of this tracking software?
Yeah, so I've done a lot in the web in terms of AI software, and one of the founders of Dyncorp is a guy named Pug Whitaker, and he was the mastermind, the financial mastermind behind the Enron financial pyramid. And so I've sold the software that actually does the semantic analysis of all the phone conversations the brokers had, and broke the case with that semantic software. So I have a lot of that forensic analysis type software.
Okay, that's great. What is it called? Is there a name?
Yeah, it was Autonomy software sold by Hewlett Packard.
Wow, right.
It's an interesting story, actually, because let's say, you know, these were energy traders, and the SEC would require you to record every conversation you had with a potential purchaser of energy, let's say. And people are buying, like, okay, I'm going to buy 200 gigawatts, you know, for the next 3 months, you know, and I'm the, you know, energy company of Oklahoma. So that's the conversation that's being recorded. And these brokers are saying rawhide all the time, rawhide, you know. And so normally, like if we were so what they did is the defense handed over like 2 million documents and 2 million conversations, audio conversations. They converted it to text, and then they ran it through the semantic analysis, and they saw these rawhides, and then they came back 2 days later and said, "What's rawhide?" And that broke the case, because if we were in this, let's say, saddle business, we would probably say rawhide all the time. But when you're trading in energy, rawhide is a very unusual word to come up to, you know, to be the 30 most frequent word. And that was one of the shell organizations. That was one of the shell trading companies that basically was a part of the financial pyramid. And then the other 30 or 40 that Pug Winokur created came out right away. It was all the daughters' names of all the board of directors. You know, they all just plopped out, and the whole thing collapsed. The Enron defense collapsed completely when they knew that, oh man, they know all of our shell companies. So it's a good story for HP Autonomy.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've had this background, you know what you're looking at. Are you using this type of thing then to help you in your sort of search to link up all of these players with, in essence, this organ donor, forced organ donor type stuff, peers, child trafficking, sex slaves, etc.?
Well, my group of contributors is a very on-the-cheap version of HP Autonomy or Planeteer.
Okay.
We connect the dots the old-fashioned way with yarn and string, like they used to do with the old, your UCLA person, you know, the old yarn Gantt charts they used to do.
Sure.
Yeah, with the pins and the yarn. And it's amazing. The human mind still is an amazing thing, especially when you have about 30 or 40 collected minds concentrating on the same goal, really concentrating and not trying to figure out when to take a break or have a lunch, you know, out at a nice restaurant. And it's amazing. And we're a poor person's Planeteer, or Palantir, excuse me.
Okay. So being that you're kind of turning the software really on, you know, with the flashlight, spotlight on the sort of the network of dastardly deeds, in essence, that some people, well, that drain the swamp, which is you know, a kind of a good YouTube little video that kind of draws attention to what's Trump going to really do with all of this now that he's supposedly been elected to drain the swamp. Is he really going to do so, or is he really just part of the swamp and maybe a different area of the swamp, and so on? So that remains to be seen, although we're starting to get some hints on some of the moves he's making and the people he's surrounding himself with, which are going to be, you know, red flags. And I think you've highlighted a few of them starting to come up from within his network, people that have, you know, already been deeply involved in the swamp. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So for those, I'll just quickly say what Dyncorp is. Dyncorp started at the same time the CIA started in 1947 with the National Security Act. And basically, the CIA was going to have three parts. One is the agents going out and looking for weapons of mass destruction and field agents doing that sort of thing, intelligence collection. They bring it back to the office or however they get it back. And then there's this other half of the business, which is analysis, which is connecting the dots, right? And the Dulles brothers, when they created it, the State Department and CIA, the Dulles brothers, said we wanted to do this third thing, which is operations, which are these black operations. And that is trying to overthrow governments and trying to, make money. And that's why they call the CIA the company, because of this third wing, which is if I can overthrow a government, I can sell the oil rights when I put my new person in there, I can do mining, I can take the people and I can make them, I can make the guys go to the mines, I can force the women into prostitution, I can sell the children, that sort of thing.
Sure, and this is the whole sort of IMF. Karen Hudis went down this rabbit hole a bit for a while, and we're talking about, wow, it gets into what are called these trading programs also that are financing this, but also the guy who, the economic hitman, the book that he wrote. So all of that's related to what you're talking about there.
World Bank and so forth. And
hello?
Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which is basically, I'll threaten you with an economic revolution, and if you don't believe me, I'll do a CIA, covert revolution. And that's basically the story of Dyncorp, is the black budget to fund those covert operations. And you're going to find Dyncorp has got like the contract, and Dyncorp's got a good side where they do the maintenance of aircraft in the Air Force, and they do other stuff. But then there are these contracts which are around teaching police forces how to do policing. And it's more like a Blackwater type, it's all very paramilitary, and they're teaching these police officers to, there's no women around, rape the boys, and sell the kids off, and it's a very, unfortunately, very aggressive type of exploitation of the country. Force the guys, force the men to do this mining and so forth. So the Dyncorp has this horrible history with the Clintons, and I'm not saying that Dyncorp has a bad history with the Bushes before that, but it really starts in Kosovo, where there is, once the bombing starts with the UN, they're harvesting organs, they're harvesting the livers and the kidneys and the hearts of these Serbian prisoners. And the current president, Thaci, Taci, I think it's how it's pronounced, was the prime minister back then, but he's the current president now. He was behind this. And so the World Court and the UN, all made reports of this, that they were trafficking in organs, and it's incredibly profitable, as far as a resource once you take these prisoners. So this pattern keeps repeating. In Africa, in Rwanda, you have this kind of trafficking, and then the guy Kagame in Rwanda then goes into Congo 3 different times, and there's all that, and then there's Sudan, and etc. Just this repeating pattern. Well, now it's repeating in Haiti, and then it repeats in Libya when she topples Libya, and then it repeats in Syria now with the white helmets. There's good guy white helmets during the day, and there's bad guys white helmets taking these kids out at night. So it's one of those things where you go, if you don't really stop this, it's just going to keep going. It doesn't get better by ignoring it.
Absolutely.
The Trump connection to this is that, and this is Dyncorp doing all these things, They do the police force in Afghanistan, the police force in Iraq, the police force in Syria, the police force in Libya, the police force in Haiti, et cetera. It's mainly these police force contracts. The owner of Dyncorp, or the person who financially controls it, is a guy named Steve Feinberg at Cerebus Capital. And, Council on Foreign Relations, the whole deal. And he's Trump's chief economic advisor.
Oops.
So, our group is saying, hey, we're going to shine a light here because you said drain the swamp, and we're going to hold your feet to the fire and say, we're nothing against Steve Feinberg, but you've got to say you're going to stop these practices. It's okay to fix airplanes, that's great, and it's okay to do remote field hospitals and all the other things Dyncorp does, but this black budget, if you don't know about the $6.5 trillion black budget that Dyncorp manages, and you don't know that Dyncorp manages the Congress's, telephone system since 1987, and so they've been wiretapping that. If you don't know that they manage the FBI's backbone for all their communication between their field offices, and they've been spying on that, you're not going to be able to run the government if you're constantly being spied on. You have to drain this swamp. This must be drained to be effective, and that's kind of the thrust of what this group is all about.
Well, and what your investigation seems to be about, at least partially. I do want to say that I found an interesting article that says that in Yemen this year, Dyncorp mercenaries replaced Blackwater. Blackwater now goes by the name Academi. I guess maybe Blackwater got a black name from some of the stuff they've been doing. But at Dyncorp, it says, is a rival of Blackwater, which is an interesting way of looking at it. I'm not so sure that's the case. As I recall, Blackwater has an association with Cheney. I believe that's one of his companies. And doesn't Cheney also have a relationship to Dyncorp?
Yeah, so it's a tangle. So first of all, Eric Prince is the CEO of Blackwater, and he had a falling out with Hillary. So Dyncorp, when it changed hands in 2009 to Steve Feinberg, Hillary kind of put Dyncorp and this other company with Sid Blumenthal called Osprey Global, kind of put those two companies in the place of Blackwater in a lot of situations. So the contracts that Blackwater would have gotten a lot, Dyncorp was put in as Hillary's substitute. So and you'll find this a lot. If Bush had something, then Hillary had to have like an equal but different, substitution. So interestingly enough, Eric Prince's, sister is Becky DeVos, who's running the Department of Education. So, and he's very close to Trump, whispering into his ear about border security and being a third or second or third source of information about border security, using these ultralight planes for surveillance and so forth. So one of the good things about studying this stuff is that they don't ever go away. They keep coming back.
Right.
Your time investment in learning about it always keeps coming back and repeating.
Yeah, the players don't change.
No, they don't change. The names change every once in a while, but the players don't change.
Right. So in essence, you're somehow focused on Haiti. I find that an interesting dynamic there. Why was it because of Braverman being involved with Haiti? How did you kind of focus on Haiti?
Yeah. So Braverman everybody thinks, oh, he came into the Clinton Foundation in 2013, June of 2013, and he was only there a year and a half. Why are you focusing so much on Haiti? Well, if you remember the earthquake in June, it was January 2010, Braverman was actually a consultant from McKinsey, and he actually set up what's called the Interim Haiti Relief Commission in 2010. And that is the funnel that Hillary Clinton used with USAID, U.S. Foreign Aid, to funnel money through to Haiti. So $7.1 billion is funneled through Haiti. And instead of Haiti's kind of like Massachusetts, but flipped horizontally. That's kind of, so anyway, the earthquake was down in the lower hook, where, in Port-au-Prince is, that would be where, the hook of Massachusetts would be. But all the development, all the money spent for USAID is in the north. And a new hospital, a new prison, a new port, a container port, as well as an oil transshipment port, a new international airport, a new a second port for a cruise ship port. And you wonder what the heck is going on. And, a new industrial park, and new roads, all this stuff in the north, but all the damage is down in the south. Could not be further away from where all the pain and suffering was.
Right.
And they do build one hospital not too far away from Port-au-Prince, but still about a 30-mile thing and the people would have to climb over a mountain range. So this is where when I was doing the Braverman series is, hey, Mr. Braverman, what's going on? Why is all this money going here? And if you talk to the people of Haiti, and I've talked to a lot of the people that, were on the staff of Aristide, who was elected 3 times and kind of had deposed 3 times. And they're saying they only got 5%. They only got 5% of the money that came through. The USAID money went directly to Clinton projects. None of the projects they said were going to be built were built. They'd have a 1,500 home project and 50 homes would be built. And all these other projects kind of go toward almost building kind of a Disneyland on the north.
Okay. Well, let's delve into that. Why build that? What's the allure of Haiti for them? Is this a tax shelter? What's going on?
Well, I think Haiti is of many things, but it's a drug transshipment point. The current Moise is the current president, was elected in November 20th. He has a banana plantation, and he has an airstrip on his plantation, and it's exactly like the old Mina airstrip, if people remember the Mina airstrip from Iran-Contra in Arkansas.
Sure.
It's a 4-hour direct north flight from Colombia, from Cartagena, to land at his airport, and then he is currently got DEA charges, on him pending for drug money laundering and drug, transport or drug trade.
Okay, well, I'm just curious because money laundering. Okay, so what you're following the work of Catherine Austin Fitts, and I've got a word out to her. I did invite her a few months ago to come on the show. She was very busy then. I'm going to try to get her back on the show. I have made her aware of your work because it does link up to the things she's investigated in the past. But this gets into what I've done some investigation into Black projects. So where this money goes. When you're talking about money laundering, you're talking about, is there something with the banking in Haiti that would allow for money to flow kind of smoothly, undetected, something like that? Low regulations, who knows what?
Well, exactly. Bill Clinton brings in his old buddy from the Arkansas rice days, when he was governor, Mollick, M-O-E-L-L-I-C-K, Bob Mollick, World Bank. So you need an entity that can handle $100 million in a day, and it doesn't look funny. If I have $100 million in my bank account, I'm probably going to get a lot of attention from the FBI, right?
Right.
But if the World Bank gets $100 million, this goes back to old BCCI with Mark Rich and the Mina Airport.
Right.
They would, with the Arkansas Development Fund, they'd fill it up to $100 million, and they would clear it out, and they would zero it out at the end of the day, and they'd fill it up to $100 million again. Well, if you had a very cursory audit and you looked at the bank balances day to day, it would say 100 million, 100 million, 100 million. Okay, nothing wrong here. There's not much money going. But actually, they're clearing 100 million a day. And my theory is that it cleared the 6 billion in the first 2 months through the World Bank.
Right.
So you have the World Bank account, and then they cleared it through the World Bank. And there was a big argument about this because the USAID has its own kind of banking arm, which is the I can't remember exactly the name of it, the Internet Development Fund or something like that. But they didn't want to use that. Bill Clinton wanted to use his old buddy at the World Bank to clear this money. So I believe the first 6 billion or 7 billion was gone within 2 months. And then they started arguing about it afterward. And so they blame incompetence and all these other things. But I think it's going to be a straightforward case on the money laundering. But as far as the other things that happen, the industrial park has 1,000 beds, you know, and these women are working in the sweatshop. Well, they pay this thing called bonus pay. Well, if you drill down on what bonus pay is, if you provide comfort services to construction workers, you get bonus pay. Very easy. They gave telephones, Digicel gave telephones to everybody in Haiti with a micro application so they could electronically pay women bonus pay, quote unquote, for these, you know, comfort, you know, setups that they had. So it was kind of led right into prostitution, loan sharking, where you know you're basically, these women are buying a sewing machine, these microloans to then get out of debt, but then they have to pay the huge interest rates up to 195%. So they're, you know, end up having to give a kidney, you know, cut a kidney out to pay just their interest on their phone. You know, it's just one of those things where it's just, it goes right back to the old, you know, mafia.
Right.
As further you get into it, the more it just seems like, hey, this is the mafia. This is Godfather.
So this is Haiti is maybe one of their more recent sort of areas to really concentrate on. Are you familiar with what are called, you know, the large money trade deals that go down? You know, that start with I think they start at 100 million. That get you know, that whole thing.
Do you mean international financial money transfer system? Is that what you're speaking of?
It's a trading operation that goes through. Well, it involves the Vatican Bank. It involves the UN. It involves players, various players. There's a whole story that you know, it's basically projects that only the CIA runs this operation, and it just sounds like Haiti is one of its central points. But eventually this all leads to what I know of as the secret space program. So far it doesn't look like you've gone down that rabbit hole. Catherine Austin Fitts has also verified that what I'm saying is correct. So it is, you know, it goes beyond human trafficking. In other words, there are other reasons why they are trying to get a huge, you know, payoff through some of these things, where they hook into a country and they deplete it. Obviously, they make it go bankrupt. Then they bring in their guys. Then they, you know, the whole economic hitman thing. So Haiti is one of those places, obviously. It also looks like the weather wars weapon, in other words, causing the damage first to draw in the so-called, I don't know what you call it, donations or USA aid and all of that. Have you looked into those links?
Yeah, so when I first say this kind of stuff, everybody says, oh my gosh, that's a wild, wacky conspiracy theory. But so it's called a peaceful nuclear explosion. And it's been occurring since 1945. And the old Soviet Union did about 715 of these for oil exploration. And what it amounts to is dig a deep hole, set off the nuclear device. It causes a rupture in the plates. Gas will start emerging, so you can follow the bubbles if you're doing this offshore. And to follow the bubbles to the gas, you're going to get to the oil. Okay, and the Haiti earthquake shows all the signs. Now, if the old USSR did this 715 times in their brief history, so it's getting the bomb in '53 and then the fall in 1989, would people trying to make a lot of money in oil exploration do this sort of thing? And I think this has actually been done a lot. I think the 2004 tsunami in Thailand was caused by PNE. I believe a lot of the oil exploration in India, when they went into their nuclear program, was for oil exploration, and a lot of what Mark Rich did off the coast of South Africa looking for oil. I don't think that turned out so well. But over and over again, I think Papua New Guinea just had a big tsunami. There's Fukushima. I'm not saying that right.
Yeah, Fukushima is a definite. Was definite. Yeah, one of those situations.
So if you
it's also in Italy. It's happened to Italy recently. Middle of Italy, as you may know, whole towns have been demolished. That seems to be some kind of shot across the bow warning, possibly from one group that's not happy with something that's going on in Italy. I'm not sure what they're not happy about, but yeah, these what are called tectonic weapons that are used. So you're aware of that. Have you put that into your scenario? Into your kind of good. That's great.
Yeah. So Haiti's on two plates, and each side of the horseshoe has a plate. And Haiti, for those who don't know, has more oil than Venezuela, which is the most richest oil country in Central and South America. So there's huge oil assets in Haiti. So one of the things about an earthquake is it collapses all the buildings, it cuts off the rail traffic, it cuts off the road traffic, it downs power lines. These are all things you would need to do in an invasion. You would need to be sending in the Delta Force to go in with teams to do all this stuff. This is what they train on, how to block roads, what you want to do is you want to keep the population, in one place so that your guys can move with impunity. And Haiti follows that, completely. Now, Hillary goes on to hire a private mercenary company, Osprey Global, to topple Gaddafi because he's got at least $9 billion in gold, and then try to topple Assad in Syria, which didn't go so well. But Haiti has all the makings and markings of a peaceful nuclear explosion.
Sure. Well, to get back to Syria, though, briefly, it hasn't gone so well, seemingly, although they are, ISIS are a bunch of paid mercenaries, in essence, that are demolishing various sites, some might call them sacred sites, in Syria. And that seems part of the package as well. Have you been tracking that kind of progress at all?
Yeah. So there's a great journalist out of Canada. There's two. One's name's Ava Bartlett, and she actually went there and kind of lived with all the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations like the White Helmets. She was the one who exposed White Helmets and said, hey, these aren't saviors. There's the one video of pulling the kid out with the dust and, setting him in the ambulance and so forth. This is all CNN fake news. What they're really doing is taking these kids. They're using the population. ISIS is using the population to live above with the parents, and then the ISIS is down below with the kids in the basement. And the shell hits the apartment building or whatever, and the parents are killed. Then those children are the ones, they create these little orphanages, and they go to UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia to be married off at the age of 6 and 7 and 8. And
right,
she kind of exposed the White Helmets as this fake NGO, which is just another Dyncorp, trained group. You've got George Clooney out there saying this and that about it, but it's just complete falsehood. And there's this other woman journalist, Beely, I can't remember her first name, but she's actually in the buildings as they're being hit by shells, reporting.
Right.
It's just amazing.
Well, this has been going on. This has been going on in Palestine as well, and this is another sort of red herring that recently Trump stopped a huge amount of investment that was going to go into supposedly some rescue or care efforts in terms of the Gaza Strip and Palestine. So he stopped those funds right when he got in office that Obama had released, and supposedly for further review, but with a very clear statement on behalf of siding for the Israelis. So, Palestine, of course, has been done. There was a woman, I forget, I think her name was Rachel, but I could get it wrong, who stood in front of a tractor, in essence, a famous story that happened in Palestine. And, to try to stop them from basically demolishing more buildings and killing more kids and so on. So, I mean, all of this going on, what do you hope to achieve in the end with getting all of this, because one thing you're doing, which is really useful, is you're following the clues and creating a trail that people can follow. People can start to add these things up, and instead of kind of walking away with a lot of pieces, they begin to have a through line, and that through line is really key to getting anything done, getting anything solved or turned around. But is that your idea, or where are you headed?
Well, I call it the golden thread, and I don't know what a Greek parable this is, but if you pull the thread, the golden thread, the whole garment becomes loose, and then finally you say the king has no clothes. And that's the black budgets. And the golden thread here would be pulling on Dyncorp's, garment, because Dyncorp manages the black budget, and they don't have the 6 trillion, but they manage it and they know where it is. And they used to manage it through the Promise software, and now they manage it through the Palantir software. And all we need to do is first publish those 650,000 emails, and that'll say where a lot of these covert operations are. And then we can take that information and go, okay, show me, Trump can say, show me in the black budget where this is being paid for. Are you just printing money at the Federal Reserve, which is what I believe, or are you, somehow doing it some other way through what you were mentioning about the Vatican and swaps and whatever? Well,
yeah, the high yield. I found the wording. I often don't get the wording, but high yield trading programs is what they are called. And there are major players that can be highlighted that are part of that network, which could be very useful.
Well, I think all that is exposing the stuff that normally was a black budget, going all the way back to the Dulles brothers and saying, hey, the CIA never really was intended to be this private army that didn't have to talk to the president to do all these topples and interventions all over the world,
right?
192 different countries. Because the problem is, if they're in 192 countries, or let's say 191, there's one more country that I'm concerned about, and that's the United States, which they have a covert network in, and they've used the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and the FBI's Counterterrorism Division to infiltrate the FBI. So I'm also worried that this is going to come back on us. It's already come back on us with all the, the spying and so forth, not just the NSA electronic surveillance, but also physical surveillance. And
sure.
So this is a 1984 thing, concern.
Right. Well, it's great that you're doing this. Now, I want to put the call out because we do have a chat room, as I mentioned, alongside this interview. So I want to give people a chance to ask you questions. So I'm putting the call out to the chat room. Those that are listening, and we have quite a substantial audience out there, anyone who wants to type into the chat room a question, it helps if you put it on in all caps, and then I can find it easily in among the chatter just between people. So if you do have a question, I'll try to pick it up as we continue here. So in terms of the Braverman situation, are you really leaving off if let's say Braverman shows up tomorrow in to teach his class, and he's moved on to the Google situation? Can you draw Google into this? Do you understand, or do you think you understand, where Braverman might not have been any kind of a whistleblower, but he might be just as deeply into the swamp and just going to the, more of a lateral move?
Yeah, you raise a good point, because the other guy who was at USAID, he's made in this guy named Shah. It's as 37 years old, he's put in charge worldwide of USAID 5 days before the earthquake. Rajiv Shah is his name, and he just got made head of the Rockefeller Foundation. So it's kind of like the World Bank and the USAID kind of work together. The World Bank is kind of like the stamp of approval saying, yes, you can spend $1 billion here. And then USAID says, okay, well, World Bank said it's okay, and there goes the $1 billion. So I do exactly what you just said. I believe that Braverman, now running the Google Foundation, this is just another funnel that you can funnel money through, and say, oh, well, the whatever foundation, the Google Foundation said this is a good idea. So it always ends up, for Braverman or Rajiv Shah, it's always going to end up benefiting Hillary. The Bush Foundation has other organizations that do. They have their projects for them. Trump hasn't figured this out yet. Trump's foundation is 1,000th of the size, and now it's shut down, but it's 1,000th of the size of the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
So yeah, Braverman, this basically, you just take the Clinton Global Initiative, which was basically CGI, which was kind of a play on the, G.I. Joe. These are going to be military actions, so we're going to be bribes and money we make with military actions. You just shift it over to the Google Foundation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder, with all this exposure, that the Clinton Foundation isn't going to sort of hit the rocks at a certain point. I wonder if this lateral move by Braverman was orchestrated for other reasons. I don't know how much stock she owns in Google, but in other words, is there any end in sight? Even draining the swamp even an option, as I write in my article, which I question, which is the deep state, Trump, and surveillance. And I get into the whole AI and what I call the battle of the AIs, in which the son of one of the financial investigators, in the Colorado shooting, forget the name of it. At any rate, sorry?
Columbine or the other one?
No, the first, I think, was the first one. Anyway, he was studying neuroscience, and he basically was a patsy, unfortunately, in what I wrote about as the battle of the AIs. Promise became an artificial intelligence, in essence, and I've had that verified. So you yourself seem to have some background in all of this. Do you know, like, how far this artificial intelligence really has gone? And have you looked into things like Geordie Rose's company, D-Wave, which is in essence quantum computing, talking about how the quantum computer is now going into other dimensions? I don't know if you've seen that presentation by him where he states that.
No, I haven't. But I'll say this: a technique that I use in my my presentation is I take like Palantir might do. I take 5 or 6 things that might be related. Let's say the Haiti earthquake. And so I bring the suspects into the room like Hercule Poirot might have done, you know, in the Murder on the Orient Express, right? He brings the 12 people into that train car.
Right.
You know? And you just basically put, instead of having 12 different news articles that you would click on and have to read all 12 articles, I'll put their faces all on one storyboard. And then I'll quickly explain in the caption who they are and how they relate to this little, you know, let's just say Murder on the Orient Express is our central theme, or earthquake in Haiti.
Hello? Okay. That's okay. I'll dial him back. So just stand by. Perhaps there was a keyword there that they decided to interrupt. He's actually on a phone line, so it's not like it's not like.
This is George. Please leave a message and I'll
No.
get back as soon as I can. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna leave him. Okay. Hello?
Hey, I'm back. This
Hi.
is George.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, you got disconnected. So continue what you were saying, but it's like, you know, this board, yeah, where you're bringing all these people and the players, you know, the suspects in,
Together.
and putting the yarn, you know, that draws the diagonals between everybody, and all of these things are connected. There's no doubt about it. So in doing so, this technique is paying off in a big way, and the fact that you've got sort of a team helping you, I guess, is part of it. So when you went down this road, you must have thought to yourself, okay, because I've actually heard some of your references. You're talking about Gary Webb, and he was the wonderful journalist who uncovered the whole DEA scandal with regard to the drugs and cocaine and so on. And he was killed. He was suicided, as they call it. It looks like there are many others. Danny Casolaro is another one. So are you looking at yourself in this way? Are you basically seeing, you know, you call about the slow kill, and I've heard you talk on Rents about it. You did a show over there recently, just for people that are listening to this. So I hate to have you repeat yourself too much, but I think people will find it kind of valuable for you to talk about that slow kill, because it is one of their methods, and it gets into, you know, the work I do. I've seen it, you know, where they've tried to sort of do this operation on me a number of times. It hasn't been real successful so far, sort of knock on wood or whatever you want to call that. But what do you have to say about all that?
Well, when the Delta brothers created the CIA, they created this organization, or they set up this organization called the Brotherhood. And much like the Muslim Brotherhood, only this is the U.S. Brotherhood. And it was run by a guy named Doug Coe. And what it was is this clandestine kind of secret society, or, you know, just like, you know, the Scottish Rite and
Right.
Third Degree Masons or any other kind of secret society, only this society was gradually, slowly, people's lives until they, you know, lose their wife, and then they get divorced, so there's a financial penalty there, and then they lose their job, and then when they go to the next job, make sure they lose that job. And so just kind of all the way down until they're not employed, they run out of money, and then when they run out of money, they're living at a friend's. This is the story for Michael Rupert, who wrote Project Rubicon. The same story for Gary Webb. You know, so you might introduce the prostitute from Colombia to break up his marriage, and then they had the Los Angeles Times kind of 14 reporters attack him to lose his job at the San Jose Mercury News, and this kind of gradual degradation. This is the same program they ran in East Germany. They called it Stasi had this. They called it Zerseitzung, which means decomposition, slow decomposition. what's from an intelligence point of view, what's great about this program, let's just call it the disruption program, is it's hard to detect. It happens so slowly over time that it just looks like the person took a bad turn in their life. They started getting into drugs or alcohol or self-pity or whatever it is, and then people, it's so hard to see because it takes so long. You know, it might take 2, 3, 4, 5 years for the person finally to be at the end of their rope, you know, before they suicide. And they need like a group like the Brotherhood is for people to go into your employer and then say, you know, by the way, did you know George is this, or did you know George is that? And there's a million different ways you can create doubt, you know, with neighbors and employers and with your spouse. You know, the oldest one in the book is the husband's on a business trip. They put in the Natasha, the beautiful girl, and he has this affair, and then he gets back home, and then there's the girl's underwear, you know, her the trip, you know. The wife realizes, you know, when she's doing the laundry that this is not the right. So it's just that easy to break up, you know, a relationship. And people think there's no way that the intelligence community would have time to attack journalists and other advocates like that. But yet, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of pages of COINTELPRO, there's hundreds of thousands of pages of CIA's Operation Chaos in the Vietnam War attacking anti-war folks. And if you look at J. Edgar Hoover, if a thing was discovered, like his registry, he did a kind of what you were talking about, this main core thing. He just changed the name. He never stopped the program. He just changed the name.
Right.
So, and that's what's happened over and over again with this program. But Bill Clinton signed a thing called Presidential Directive 62, and I have this in my my presentations. And it talks about disruption. It talks about having the CIA help the FBI with the disruption program. So it's really kind of like COINTELPRO 2. It's kind of a rebirth of the COINTELPRO program in 1998.
Right. So, but you also talk about this brownstone, and then you had another word that you were using, which is like a key word for sort of setting up this kind of, it's almost like a sting operation, it sounds like.
Well, so if you can imagine a speakeasy, is the best analogy I could think of, is if you didn't know that speakeasies existed in 1920s and 30s, and you were walking around, you'd think that if somebody said, well, there's these places where you could go, and you walk down, and there's a little door they open, and they have a password, and then you go in, you can get alcohol. If you've never seen it before, you wouldn't believe it existed, okay? And it's the same way with brownstone operations. Brownstones are a way of sexual, are setups, you know, where you're filming people having sex with people they shouldn't have sex with. And then you're showing it to their wife or their church or Congress or the press or whoever to have leverage on them. And all you need is a kid. And the FBI has this kid. I show it in my my films. It's like a cooler that you would take on a picnic, and it has all these low light cameras, and it shows you how to set them up, and you basically just invite the girls in, and you invite the politicians and the generals and the judges and whoever else you're trying to compromise and have leverage on, and that's all it takes. Now that's the reason why they use the young girls and the young boys, is because there's more leverage value, there's more blackmail value. But it literally is a way that you can go into a country as a CIA agent all by yourself with $10,000 in your pocket, and 10 years later you're running the country. It's sort of serious. It's in the CIA manual. That's how you take control of the country with $10,000 in your pocket.
Yeah, incredible stuff. General Stanley McChrystal, you know, I got into the Michael Hastings death, killing, and and I see that you mentioned it briefly and said you're going in that direction and you're going to reveal some stuff. I'm curious if you're aware of what I'm aware of with regard to McChrystal, how much investigation you have done down that road, because the Hastings death is, that's pretty close to home. I believe he died here in LA somewhere, as I recall. So anything about that you can sort of tidbits you want to throw out?
Yeah, well, Carrie, I'm going to break it here on your show. So I've been pretty coy about it, and people say, get to Michael Hastings, get to Michael Hastings. Well, so Michael Hastings is the one who breaks this whole child trafficking, organ harvesting in Afghanistan, because Stanley McChrystal's running that operation in Afghanistan. And he also knows about these brownstone operations that they're running out of CENTCOM in Florida, going to Jeffrey Epstein's orgy island.
Right.
But the main thing he knows about is the organ harvesting and the child trafficking and the drugs in Afghanistan. So McChrystal is very tied in with David Petraeus. Petraeus replaces McChrystal. They're all very tight. It's a very tight group. And I had a lot of sympathy. I don't know, a lot of sympathy, but my father was in the Army in Guadalcanal and all that, and all the way to the Philippines, 4 different islands. And, it takes a lot of courage, to do what they do, and when these guys were coming up. Now, Petraeus never saw an enemy bullet coming at him once. He was shot by his own guy. But McChrystal has some bravery in his record. So I hate saying these things, but they did murder. Philippe Reines is going to be the guy who's going to be engineering the murder of Michael Hastings, and also Paul Walker, you're going to find. And both of them Paul Walker's going to be for Haiti, and then Michael Hastings is going to be for Afghanistan. CENTCOM, Afghanistan. CENTCOM is based in Tampa, and there's a group of people, and I won't go to their names right now, because one of the things is there's an Espionage Act. So if you release classified information, it's the Chelsea Manning thing. You get 30 years in the solitary confinement. So I'm kind of waiting for some emails to have a little air cover here, but this will come out. So I don't know if you can add anything to that from your point of view, since you're in LA. But
well, I did some further investigation on McChrystal, which I thought was interesting. I saw that he worked in black projects, what I call above black, before he ever went to Afghanistan, as a matter of fact. And I had a theory, because, as you may know, Hastings was rather embedded with McChrystal's group over in Afghanistan. So they became kind of tight. And if you've read Hastings' book, which I have, great book, by the way, they kind of got very drunk a lot, and they shared stories and so on. So it was my theory, has been my theory, that he was killed actually over some of the stuff that was revealed in some of those close-knit conversations that he had, being embedded with McChrystal, and that McChrystal knows where the bodies are buried, so to speak, in a much more sophisticated way than we're even talking here. In other words, getting into what is in essence the secret space program, Black Bread, projects, getting into the nano satellite grid, which is Project Leonid, that I've talked about, and Anthony Sanchez broke that story, having to do with Lockheed executives going on the run, Lockheed engineers, and revealing that they were afraid for their lives, that they had done some tests on the artificially intelligent, self-replicating nano satellite grid that they had put in place, and that there was something like 60% chance that it would one day turn on humans. So they started to regret what they were really involved in, and some of them started to disappear, some of the scientists. out of Lockheed. And so this whole story kind of fell into the lap of a software guy called Anthony Sanchez, who is also an investigator and has gone down the rabbit hole in my areas, having to do with secret space, etc. So this is where you come kind of full circle, because all of this stuff is linked. There's nothing that kind of hangs out there by itself, I guess you might say. So it's great that you're revealing this other level that goes on, because there's a lot of attention right now on, in essence, child trafficking, sex slaves, and pedophilia, which is a big part of the whole scenario. And of course, getting a hook into people, Jimmy Savile, that whole story. But it does get into the whole area of Satanism and a lot of the secret societies. Now, I heard you mention that you hadn't really gone down that end of things. Project Camelot has had multiple reports from very believable witnesses on that story. And we know that with the Franklin scandal, I interviewed somebody associated with that. I've got somebody contacting me right now who has a very interesting story associated with all of that, that's very afraid, I guess, on some level, trying to really vet me before he comes forward with his story. But, this child trafficking, this kind of living off the fluids and organs and killing of young people, and what I have been told also has to do with a special focus on young girls specifically also. So yeah, I mean, this people disappearing out of national parks. There's all kinds of stories. All of this is going to get uncovered by where you're headed. So I assume you're going down some of those roads, or even some of that stuff is starting to creep up on your radar.
Yeah. So I need to listen to your show more. You're getting a lot of great stuff. So let me go back to the satellites for a second. I will get to the trafficking, but you mentioned something about the nanosatellites, which is really interesting. So there's this 3-tier system. And this goes back to the David Petraeus and the battle war fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. So there's this dust. There's this kind of smart dust that you can spread over a battlefield. You can do it from a high elevation, or you can do it from a helicopter, or even a little drone. And it basically just reflects to a satellite. That's the only thing. It's nothing special. But you dust a battlefield, and you can see the footprints, you can see, vehicle tracks and so forth. And the special forces have developed this, like you were saying, this nano satellite. They call them CubeSats, so you can hold them in your hand. And they fall out of orbit, they burn up and all that, but you don't care because you make so many of them. And that's your kind of second layer. You have your ground people doing ground stuff with surveillance with drones and these little planes, that they can fly. But then that's your first layer of reconnaissance. But then you have this CubeSat level, or what you were saying, nanosatellite level. And then you have your big satellites, and they're in geosynchronous orbit, with the really great lenses, the great camera. And you can dust the battlefield with different types of dust that are for different codes. So for instance, you can have a person who's, during the week is a worker and dust their whole family, and then they go off to be a weekend warrior off in some camp somewhere, and then you can dust them. And then you can kind of watch on the satellite, NORAD, the movements, and this is how they make decisions. And this is kind of classified, but I mean, this is how they make decisions on drone strikes.
Right.
And the signature strikes and so forth. That's exactly what you're saying. Lockheed is very much a part of this. NORAD is kind of like a Lockheed, I'm not going to say subsidiary, but it's Lockheed driven. And this is a technology that's being used. As I say, all this stuff that is in war fighting overseas ends up coming back to the domestic arena. So if you have a national terrorism watch list, like we do, with about 2 million people on it, through the counterterrorism division of the FBI, that now we're dusting homes and we're dusting cars, and we can even dust people's shoes, you know. And now we're not seeing those from a NORAD satellite, but we're seeing them from the nano level, and we can track people's, you know, footprints. And so it's a 7 by 24. Once you're on that list, it's a 7 by 24, you know, surveillance. So that's an interesting, you know, an interesting topic.
Yeah. I just want to say, though, that that's interesting that you're talking about that level, because of course chemtrails factors in here, and the chemtrail grid that has been set up really around the planet at this point has created a kind of dome effect. And I am reading a book called The Pentagon's Brain, and I don't think I can get this woman's name who wrote it, but you can just look pretty unique names for a book. Anyway, she's an investigator who kind of investigates the kinds of things I do, but she does it from a much more, you might say, mainstream perspective. She doesn't go as above black where I go, but nonetheless, she is uncovering some details. And I'll read a book like this to fill in, you might say there's a gap. First, there's the mainstream level, right? The mainstream news and the lies and whatever else you get. And then there's another level that's called top secret. And then above that, there's what we call above black. And that's a whole different level. And so she is talking about how this was created, this idea for creating a sort of a dome effect, what is in essence using these chemicals. And you can think of the sky, that they're painting the sky to do this so that they can detect the tracks, just like you would detect the tracks of somebody walking on the ground through this dust you're talking about. And of course, some of the chemtrails do hit the ground with nano and so on. But aside from that, we're talking about this brilliant guy who was part of, who was working with Edward Teller back in the day. And I'm trying to look up his name as I'm talking here, because it's fascinating, because his name has never crossed my radar before, but he's obviously a key scientist who has created a lot of the ideas that got put into place, you know, and that we're seeing around us at this time. Anyway, it has to do with the idea of looking at craft and being able to also target what you might call, whether it's a particle beam weapon or it's just a plane, you know, that might be crossing into our airspace. It also has to do with what are way above black, you know, TR-3B and other kinds of high level craft that we build in our black projects and so on. So what the chemtrails and what this dome is building is the same thing that you're talking about on the ground that they use to track people. And so it's very interesting that they do that on the ground. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, well, and they're talking about a smart dust. If you Google smart dust, you can see where they're trying to convince everybody that there's an actual computer in the dust. But there really isn't. It's just a passive system. It's not an active system. But at this point, anyway, they're always trying to go that direction. I wanted to also say one other thing going in the direction of the child trafficking thing. I talked before about Doug Coe and having this brotherhood, and that's kind of like the enforcers. I don't know if you remember the movie that I think it's the ants, but they had the grasshoppers and then they had the ants.
Right.
And the grasshoppers were all driving the motorcycles. It was a motorcycle gang, and they were real intimidating. And then they had the ants that were the worker bees. Maybe I'm thinking of Bug's Life. Maybe it's a Bug's Life. But that's the kind of the system that the brotherhood is a blood network. That's the enforcers, and then the groups that are actually doing the harassment of people are actually people like fringe religious groups that think they're doing the right thing. So like Laura Silsby's group, her name is Laura Saylor now. She was the group that went down, the 10 people that went down and took the kids, the 33 kids, and abducted the 33 kids in Haiti to try to move them to the, orphanage or wherever they were going.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that story. These are the kind of organizations, these what they do is they approach the pastors of these kind of fringe religious organizations, and they convince them that the target of the harassment is a bad person. So they'd say Gary Webb is a child molester, or Gary Webb is a pedophile, or Gary Webb is a date rapist. Okay, and they would try to present some kind of evidence, and then the pastor would say, this is, you know, it's God's law, it's above you know, the Constitution. We need to, you know, take care of this person. And there's thousands of these organizations in the United States. If you look at ODNI, which is in 2010 had 2,000 of these contractors or these religious organizations. This is the black budget. This is the Dyncorp missing black budget. This is what I want my project to get at is, who are those 2,000 contractors? And if Trump just said, look, we're not paying these contractors anymore until I know what they're doing, you know, until there's some kind of reporting and what, you know, some kind of, you know, police reports or mission reports and briefings about what they're doing, we're not paying this anymore. That would change everything, you know, overnight, because there's a lot of people that are, you know, are under these kind of harassment programs. So that's the other.
Well, you know, I mean, the whole idea of orphanages, places that, you know, have kids, anywhere that has centralizing kids, so-called ranches, places where kids are put also by their families, well-meaning families, to get over drug addiction, for example. We've got a lot of experimentation going on in regular prisons, going on in all of these so-called institutions that are supposed to be places where people are trying to so-called help children. Ends up, and now you said some of these people are just, they don't know what they're part of. They're doing, you know, they're do-gooders. They're trying to make, you know, a dent and do something positive for humanity and for the children. And they are being wrapped up and used to traffic these children, like a certain point from point A to point B, not knowing what goes on. You said like in the middle of the night and so on, right?
Right.
So
there are a few at the top that do know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's the people at the top. I mean, these people, I'm not sure exactly when you say contractors, what if you're talking about individuals, but, you know, see, one of the things I've never done that much of in Camelot is go after individuals, because I don't see the point. You know, take one person out and another person's going to come in and replace them. You know, like you said, they'll change their name. They may change their location, but they're on about the same business anyway. And it's funny because last night I just saw this this movie. Oh God, it's called God. What's it called? It's kind of gotten overlooked at the box office, but it's out right now, and it's one of those. God, I can't remember the name of it. It's just out of my mind at the moment, but it has to do with something like Dark City or Dark something, and it you know has a well-known actor in it. He actually wrote the screenplay as well, which I was interested to see. But they show something similar to that. In other words, that he ends up getting involved with a religious group, a young woman who first was really a drug addict and then sort of found Jesus or whatever, and she interferes with the building of a casino or whatever it is. But there's a lot more going on behind the scenes with all of this. And so this is the kind of thing where religious organizations may be used even against their own knowledge, but some of the players certainly know what's going on, right?
Yeah, so one of the, you probably are familiar with the early days of the MK Ultra program and
Sure.
The PIA, yeah. And, you know, a lot of times you'll say MK Ultra and you get that same reaction that you get when you say COINTELPRO. People say conspiracy theory. And I stand up next to the stack of papers and documentation, you know, that is COINTELPRO or is MKUltra? I say, geez, I didn't write all these. I didn't type all these out. You know, somebody did. I didn't do it. You know, and it's amazing how people, you know, accept the conspiracy theory label. And the MKUltra was really like an umbrella project. It was like 20 or 25 different projects underneath MKUltra, and the documentation is there.
Yeah, that gets back to this book that I'm reading, you know, what she talks about, because I know it from a different angle. She's seeing it from what she thinks are the early days when it was going on much before that in Nazi Germany and so on. But it has very long legs. But, you know, the interesting thing is the link up to the Dulles brothers of the whole MKUltra and how the Dulles brothers factor in again and again and again. There's this anecdote that happens in the book that I think is fascinating, because what happens is one of the younger Dulles boys, I guess, not the ones that we know of, a son of one of them, was you know, very badly injured in the Korean War, and then he never recovered his sanity. So they experimented on him using a lot of these techniques and trying them out and so on, to do with mind control and so on. And she's writing about this in this book that's pretty well documented, I have to say, and quite mainstream, The Pentagon's Brain. At any rate, what happens is they think he was partially, they were saying he's completely crazy because he kept saying that his father, which was, you know, the head of the CIA, was a Nazi spy. And I just got done doing an interview with Michael Shrimpton, from, a barrister in England, who's claiming the same exact thing. They were calling this young man crazy because he was saying that about his father. It turns out it was true. And that Shrimpton, in my interview, it's a 2-part interview on YouTube, goes into a fair amount of detail in regard to this secret German, you know, organization that's basically a spy organization that was linked to the Gestapo and the Abwehr, what is it known as the Abwehr in Germany, another secret spy organization. That's my cat in the background sharpening his nails on my furniture. Okay. Anyway, so this is the kind of thing where the Dulles brothers, also there's of course the, you know, the Devil's Chessboard that was written recently by a journalist, I forget his name, I think he runs Salon, and you may be familiar with that book, you know, about the Kennedy assassination and how Dulles was the mastermind behind it.
Yeah, I read the Devil's Chessboard not too long ago, and for anybody who, what's great about the Devil's Chessboard is it quotes their own memoirs, so it's not in the hand of some, you know, conspiracy theorist. It's writing in the hand of, it's quoting Alan Dulles, you know, and so it's David Talbot.
Yeah.
David Talbot. It's just an absolutely incredible book. And, you know, Alan Dulles, you know, if you really want to understand him, he had this idea, if I don't control the mind of the population, I don't control the population. So I need to be always implanting some kind of meme or some kind of narrative in the population. So he does this, you know, the Project Mongoose, which is, not Mongoose, I'm saying the wrong thing, the controlling of the press, with Henry Luce doing Time Magazine and Life Magazine and all the Henry Luce publications.
Right.
You know, but then he also works with Walt Disney. And he wants to, you know, if Pirates of the Caribbean, this is CIA folklore, the Pirates of the Caribbean is a kind of like join the CIA, rape, pillage, and plunder, and no consequences. You know, everything you see in that ride is basically the life of a CIA agent with no consequences. And the movie Sleeping Beauty, or the animated film, or whatever you want to call it, Walt Disney didn't want to make because it was like, Alan, this is too dark. This is too dark. You know, it's a mirror on the wall and all this. And
yeah,
he said, no, this is going to be great. This is going to be the CIA agent is going to drug rape this woman and rape her, but she's not even going to know it, and then she's going to wake up and he's going to kiss her and her life's going to be saved. And this is how Alan Dulles thought. And part of the MK Ultra program was this drug, or this aerosol spray that you could spray that would, you know, incapacitate everyone in the room, you know. And Frank Olson is this guy who ends up being kind of thrown out of a window in New York at the Pennsylvania Hotel. But he came up with this way of, you know, making an aerosol spray that you could, you know, incapacitate everyone in a house or a room or whatever, or spray it from a plane even to incapacitate a whole neighborhood or a village. So anyway,
yeah, I mean, you know, to say nothing about the Clinton.
How he thought. That's how he thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to say, you know, talking about a guy getting thrown out of a window who works with presidents, certainly the Clinton, what was he, the Clinton lawyer, whatever, you know, who got thrown out of the window and was suicided as well. I forget his name.
Well, Vince Foster didn't get thrown out of a window, but you must mean somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. It's just drawing a blank on the name right now. There's just so many names to remember, but it'll come to me at some point. All I'm saying is this guy was instrumental in creating what was back in the Truman administration, in essence, what we call MJ-12, you know, and so on.
Well, you mean Forstall. You mean
Forstall. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this seems
Bethesda mental hospital.
Right. So this seems to be like a pattern, you know, to say nothing of the bankers suiciding themselves over the last few years.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the people in microbiology, and this is Dyncorp again, Dyncorp has all the vaccine contracts for the Center of Disease Control. So what they do is they'll do a Zika or they'll do an Ebola or whatever on a population. And this goes all the way back to the Tuskegee Airmen. I mean, if you think the CIA doesn't test on unsuspecting populations, then there's probably a good, you know, fairy tale that you can watch, you know, on you know, pay-per-view. But they do, and that's what they do. That's what the CIA does.
Absolutely.
And then once there's a reaction, then they sell whatever drug is the antiviral, and they test it on that population, and that's what creates the profits for the pharmas. So Dyncorp is extremely tied in with all the pharmaceutical companies,
right?
AstraZeneca, et cetera. So it's one of these things where I create chaos, and then I profit from, you know, quiescing chaos. And it's just this constant disturbance, and then, I'm the answer to this problem. You know, so I'm interested in your chat room. I've never done this kind of ask me anything. I'm interested in your questions from your chat room.
Right. Well, I'm looking to see. You know, the funny thing is that at least they're not putting them in all caps. So I'm not seeing a lot go by here as far as direct questions for you. Again, encouraging the chat people to ask questions to my guest. If you ask me questions, it doesn't really, you know, perhaps you want to see me later about any questions you have for me, but it's better if you ask him. Okay, so someone here saying, where are children most at risk? It's kind of an open-ended question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, billboards are going up in Houston around the Super Bowl. So you're going to find around the Super Bowl, around the Olympics, around these major sporting events where people are coming in from all over the world. That's when your abductions are going to happen. And even the FBI, you know, says this. And have your girls jog in pairs. Don't let your girl go out by herself. Jog in pairs, or jog with a friend. Jog with a male boyfriend or whatever, or your male friend. Don't jog alone, especially at night.
Right, definitely. Yeah. someone else is asking, well, they're asking you to elaborate on Trump, the election. I assume maybe they mean the election. Anything you might have to say about that?
I think Trump is just really, so I've known him a long time. I was involved in the, like you mentioned, the Franklin case, tangentially. The Paul Rodriguez, who broke the Franklin story in '89, worked for the Washington Times, and I tried to get a story to him in 2002, and I passed him some information in 2003, but he never wrote the story. And then he died of cancer at a young age after that. But you know, I try to be, you know, I think he's a great journalist, and sometimes, you know, there's a lot of bloody footprints in this business. But Trump was one of the Epstein brownstone operations in 1993. It was 2 incidents. One was kind of a lead-up incident, and then the other one was, but it was, he didn't know how old, you know, I mean, I'm just going to say this is just true. He didn't know how old the girls were. He didn't know how old the girl was at the time. So this is the kind of the dirt that they have on Trump, that Epstein has on Trump. And okay. I think Trump is best off saying, look, you know, it was 1993 that happened. And I didn't know, and Jeff, you are the one who had a CIA operation, or you had a Dyncorp operation with 12 cameras. You're the one who put that girl in the room and brought her in from Kosovo or Bosnia or wherever you brought her in from. I think there's more than enough blame to go around here. And I'm not going to have my presidency compromised by those 2 incidents. So I was in New York in 2002 and 2003. I roomed with a gal who worked the Trump parties, the Epstein Trump parties. She was a caterer. She was a model and everything other times, but she did that. They did Long Island parties, and they did these parties on the Upper West Side where Jeff Epstein's stone fortress is up there. And it was kind of, the parties had a beginning and a middle and an end. The parties would come in, and it was kind of handshakes and Bloomberg and Trump and everybody. In the middle, it's kind of a lull where all the waitresses disappeared and waiters disappeared, and then they'd come out in their new costumes, and then everyone would go, oops, this is getting crazy, I'm leaving. And then there would be the kind of like entendres that would occur after that, where there was these rooms that were set up and they were being filmed. Well, Trump always came in for like 5 minutes with some model, had his picture taken, shook a couple hands, and he would leave. He wasn't the, oh my God, I have to stay here and lurk and, you know, troll for some kind of, he was always with some beautiful model. And this, he probably went to, I'm going to guess, 30 Jeff Epstein parties. So he's involved, but very tangentially. And my advice to Trump is to just say, okay, spill it. It's kind of like the Billy Bush tape, you know. Once it's out there and it's processed, everybody, okay, that was then, this is now. And now we want you to run the country now. We don't care what happened in 1993. You know, but I think Trump's still a little bit afraid that will come out and compromise his presidency. Okay.
You know anything about, this is my question, did you follow the Judge Scalia story? Because that really reeks, and I've gotten some back channel stuff about that.
Yeah, so there's this, like I said before, there are these groups of kind of religious sect people that are willing to do basically whatever, you know, they're ordered to do, and it's God's will or God's wishes. And, you know, it's the pillow on the face thing. I find a lot of this in hospitals, where everything's going along great with the patient, and then all of a sudden at between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the person dies. And it's all, usually natural causes, whatever. But there's what I call the disorderly orderly. It's the guy with the long beard. He's got all the tats. He looks like he came out of the Bureau of Prisons, and he's in a motorcycle gang. That's the guy who's is really from the Bureau of Prisons, from Dyncorp. Dyncorp manages the Bureau of Prisons.
Oh God!
And they release a lot of these people into the mix to do this kind of heavenly intervention on. So anyway, I believe that Scalia was just a pillow on my face.
Right. Well, that seems to be the case. Who orchestrated that is a little unclear, but fair enough. Let me see. Somebody's saying, will you create a Twitter group? Don't you already have one?
Yeah, I didn't create it, which is great. I love it when, other people do stuff because I work a lot on this. But it's a Facebook group called HRC for Hillary Rodham Clinton, and then a rat line. A rat line is any kind of illicit trade network that's a covert trade network, like a trade network in children or oil or guns or whatever. HRC rat line on Facebook.
Okay. Another person says, can George discuss any of his direct personal experiences being a TI?
Yeah. Well, so being a targeted individual, this again goes back to the overseas program. So if you read Peter Scahill from The Intercept or from the drone papers,
sure,
you'll see this thing called the disposition matrix. And because this kind of goes back to your main core thing, because we have these computers and this servers and server farms, we can have a file for every person, man, woman, and child in every country in the world. This is kind of like Collect It All from the Snowden movie, Collect It All.
Sure.
And Snowden's in the movie and he goes, well, who are you targeting? He's thinking about terrorists, and he's sitting there with the NSA guy, and the guy goes, everybody.
Yep.
So that was the Snowden movie, and it's true. So the disposition matrix is, we have the methodology of determining who's a winner and who's a loser. And depending on who's in power, that list changes a little bit. But once you're on one list, it's hard to get off. Like once you're on the terrorism watch list, you were a Ron Paul supporter and you put that bumper sticker on your car and you were in the wrong state, like Missouri.
Or you watch, you watch my channel.
Yeah, all your reviewers, they're done. They're out of the IP address. So that is the kind of the top of the funnel. Okay. And there are different methodologies at every point along the way to move you down the funnel out the other end. And the other end of the funnel isn't a fun end. It's like sleeping on a park bench, penniless, and about ready to expire. And these groups that I'm talking about, like the New Life Refuge group in Idaho and all these other cults. What I was going to say before is cults are really basically an amalgamation of sex trafficking with the women, child trafficking with the kids. With the men, you have the enforcement networks of drug networks and so forth. So it's kind of like a little crime Cosa Nostra in a little microcosm in the cult. And the same way for these kind of branch, extreme religious organizations. Okay, so the CIA through the FBI counterterrorism division there's thousands of these that they've contracted with, and it's like franchises. The only way I could describe it is like McDonald's, and they're out there. And what you want to do is, for your targets, okay, this goes back to warfare. You want to maintain an equilibrium during the day. You don't want to lose anybody during the day. You just want to maintain your perimeter. And at night is when you want to do your insurgency with your psychological operations and so forth. And that's exactly how the program for Diffuse and Disrupt works in the United States with the FBI's counterterrorism. Is you have a box, you have a surveillance box around you as you move around, and I can explain that more in detail later.
Well, Rich, well, let me just say that does say you move in predictable ways, and they've figured out what your pattern is. Yeah, but go ahead.
Exactly. Well, exactly. You nailed it.
Hello? Don't tell me that made me lose him. That's just incredible.
Can you hear me?
Now you're back. Yeah, now we can.
Okay. Yeah. So predictive analytics is just that. It's like you usually go to see the same friend at the same time of day. So I don't need to have a huge amount of informants all over the city. I just need to have them move around according to, let's say I have 1,000 targets in a city, or 100. Let's say I have 100 targets, and I have 1,000 informant operatives. I can move those people around in a judicious way and cover everybody, but it makes the target think that there's 1,000 people following me everywhere. You know, I'm constantly being harassed. So it has this kind of the whole idea is to overwhelm you psychologically, that there are all these people against you. But in reality, it's just this judicious use of these different teams in a clever way. They're trying to cut in front of you all the time. They're always trying to cut in front of you and cut you off on the freeway and cut you off, you know, wherever you are. And so it's this, you know, J. Edgar Hoover used to say, I want the target to think that there's a G-man behind every mailbox. and
Yeah.
It just this psychological operation to overwhelm you. That's being a TI.
Yeah, sure. So you've got this going on. I've had it going on with me, but sometimes it's actually pretty amusing when you spot it. So is that what you're saying?
Yeah. You know, I've definitely got it. I mean, it's a program.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is kind of fun to do is, and we've done this. We didn't even mean to do it, but we like to change our mind a lot. So we'll be headed.
Really frozen.
Yeah, we'll be.
This is a mom.
Yeah, makes them crazy. So they're running around like we call it Keystone Cops, and and my boyfriend and I do that kind of thing where we end up. We say we're going to go one place. We start out there, and really legitimately, we just change our mind. But we always laugh about it because we know it's going to drive them crazy. Someone wants
me to think about it.
Yeah.
If you think about it, if I have a microphone and a camera in your house, and they can make these things really small, right?
Yeah.
And you say, let's go to the play, or whatever, and it's 20 minutes away. It's easy to have operatives wherever you land.
Sure. In
20 minutes, you know. So, but if you then go the opposite direction, then now you have to call an audible. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, there have been some obvious ones. Of course, they want you to spot them once in a while. Otherwise, it doesn't. You know, not really.
No psychological effect.
Yeah.
No psychological effect.
So you have to sometimes, you know, and I know they're scrambling right now because I'm about to move apartments. So they got to figure out between the time when this woman moves out and I move in, how to get all their stuff in place and whatnot. So it's kind of funny. Let's see, Pizzagate. They want you to elaborate perhaps on that. Do you have something to say about that?
Well, I think Pizzagate is a part, and I think there was some other guy, some CIA guy that said the same thing. Pizzagate is just the kind of the tip of the iceberg of a much larger human exploitation. I think, you know, I talk about this, that what you have coming into New York and Washington through this kind of, like you were saying, the financial network and the government network. World Bank is in Washington, D.C. Council on Foreign Relations is in New York. So those are going to be your nexus points for all this stuff. And, you know, just like any other invention, when these guys come in from the Middle East, you know, they're going to want, you know, their entertainment, you know, afterward. And they're going to want to, you know, partake in women. And what also diplomats or different people are putting in front of them is saying, hey, you know, you're a Muslim guy, you can marry a 6-year-old, you can marry a 7-year-old, you can marry an 8-year-old. So there's this showcasing that happens. So I think Comet Pizza, you're going to find, is going to be kind of a showcase for young children that could be moved. This is the Ted Gunderson thing. Ted kind of got off on the Illuminati, and he kind of got disinfoed, and he kind of got a little bit taken off track. But he was pretty right on the trafficking piece, which is there's got to be some place in Washington, D.C. where we show you the kids. There's got to be a showroom at somewhere. And, you know, Comet Pizza is going to be, I think, one of those places.
Right.
But it's more than that. It's oil, it's arms, it's organ harvesting, and then the child trafficking is a piece of it.
So I think, you know, you've said this already, and I do see some people in the chat kind of wanting you to say, you know, there's good operatives out there doing good jobs, so and so, certainly in all of the agencies, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, there's three branches of the CIA. There's the operatives. Like I'll give a great example. Valerie Plame was what's known as a non-official covert officer. And she basically was the Mata Hari of NATO. And she compromised all of NATO. And, you know, as far as the United States' interests were concerned in NATO in the mid and early 90s, she, almost by herself, you know, dominated NATO. We knew what everyone was thinking. And that was probably important right after the fall of the Berlin Wall. But that's what I call being a great operative and being a great intelligence officer. So to those people in the CIA, I take my hat off and say this is fantastic. And there's this analysis side of it. This used to be a big wall at the CIA. I can't remember. It was kind of a, you know, windowless offices, and they had a big wall in between the analysis side and the operations side. And these analysts like me, they're connect the dots people, you know, with the yarn and the, you know, the pins.
Sure.
That's also a fantastic piece of the CIA, and we couldn't live without them. I go back to this. My issue with the CIA is when you decide that I am now a separate deep state government group, and I'm going to do these topples without informing the president. And unfortunately, this started with the Dulles brothers as early as 1954 with the topple of Guatemala and Arbenz. And it just kept going with Mossadegh and in Iraq, in Iran, and just kept going. And then you had Cuba, you know, with that in '62, and coming into the president's office and saying, oh, by the way, we ran an operation, and here's how many people we lost, and we decided to overthrow Castro. And oh, by the way, it didn't go so well, and we need you to authorize bombing. You know, it's just, and the same thing happened in Syria, which is, oh well, I didn't mean to. I really wanted to tell you about this. We have a covert Muslim Brotherhood, and they're marching on, you know, Damascus, and we really need you to bomb. With Obama, same thing. You know, Hillary kind of informing Obama, and Hillary kind of did the same thing with Benghazi. Oh, by the way, I just want to let you know we overthrew, you know, the Libya. You know, that's what I'm talking about, is where the Dallas type.
Hello?
The people in the intelligence community for what they do that, so.
Okay, kind of dropped out a tiny bit there. All right, somebody's asking about, I know we're going to keeping you for a while here, so I'm going to break this off pretty soon here.
Okay.
You've been more than generous with your time and your information, and I want to thank you so much. And I want to say a disclaimer here, because I don't have my little disclaimer thing, I don't think, up here, but I'm going to say that, this is the opinions of the guest, and that we have welcomed him on the show, and that we believe in free speech, and that we are not responsible for what is said here on the show by our guests and so on and so forth for Project Camelot. Because, I'm on every list you can imagine, I'm sure. So whatever. What did you mean about Paul Walker? Somebody asked this, somebody asking, not me.
A lot of times, you need the emails to catch up with you to prove your case so that you don't seem like a conspiracy theorist. But I think what you're going to find with Paul Walker is Paul Walker has kind of that moment where he was very big into the Haiti relief, and he had a fund, and he was doing he was kind of like this, what I call a social justice cover, for Haiti. He just didn't realize he was being used as a social justice cover for what the Clintons were doing in Haiti. And when he found out about it, he was pissed, and he was going to go to it's one of the downtown television stations and do a live, the Clintons are a fraud broadcast. And so he was intercepted on his way. And I know everything's going to sound like conspiracy theory between here and now. So I'll just leave it at that until some more emails come out. But you're going to find this Philippe Reines, who is kind of the male Huma Abedin for Hillary Clinton. He's going to be the one that's going to be this fatal leak. That's going to, all this information will come out.
Okay. Well, I have also said that, there's a lot of focus on what was contained in the emails and stuff, but nobody focuses on the fact, in my view, that she has a secret server. The fact of the very fact of its existence should indicate to people that she's part of what is, in essence, a shadow government, and that she's operating out of that. That's what the server is about, and so, just not to miss the forest for the trees, as they say, the fact that it's the fact that people have to realize is once all of the details and all the players are named and all of this stuff gets out, which more and more it is, it's starting to understand the bigger picture as to why this is really going on. The fact that, governments are being, in essence, toppled, that the world is being run this way, and understanding the players who are involved in running it and what their modus operandi is, and what they're all about, what their plan is, where are they going with all of it. That's kind of where you want to look, in my opinion. Do you want to add anything to that? And do you have any maybe closing statements you'd like to make?
Yeah, I'll wind it up with this. And this is the power of open media research. It's what I call this process of me kind of summarizing what the researchers say every day or a couple of times a day. And it's kind of like a heat-seeking missile. One document was released by the FBI, which was totally redacted, which said, here are the 7, it was the investigation of Hillary's server. And it said, here are the 19 different Gmail accounts we found. And then it redacted all 19 names. Well, if you remember the case, there was only 5 people that got immunity. So that leaves 14 that, were involved in this, Gmail thing that weren't on that list. Well, my research group and everyone focused on that. And focus on the fact that Israel had this information, Russia had it, China had it, and today, and basically said sooner or later you're going to be outed. So sooner or later you're going to the big house because this is a felony. This is a violation of the Federal Records Act, right? So today we had Victoria Nuland resign. Or fired. We had Patrick Kennedy at the State Department quit. 2 others quit. So in a sense, it's a small victory because, we drained the swamp a little bit today. And it's just that kind of focus that's required to drain the swamp. Trump is, in a way, has to look at what the facts are. And that's the essence of my research and my group's research.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope we can bring you back in the future as you progress. And I want to encourage people to go to your YouTube channel. So can you put the name out of the URL that people can find you easily?
Just do George Webb, Drain the Swamp. If you Google George Webb with 2 B's and then Drain the Swamp, you'll see the kind of introductory video. And if you go to YouTube and you just say George Webb, and just George Webb will get you to my series.
Okay. Well, I was able to find you with no problems, so I'm sure everyone else can as well. I've also liked some of your videos, so that you can find them on my Project Camelot channel as well under Must See. So, well, onward and upward, as they say, and this is the circle of deceit. This is the circle that is often called the trail of the octopus, and you can think of the emblem of the NRO as really the octopus that's sitting on top of the globe. And this is what Danny Casolaro was investigating. And in the end of the day, my understanding is Danny Casolaro really discovered where the money was going. He got as far as the top of Citibank right before he was killed. So that is a story that still needs to be told, and some of it's come out, but there's a lot more there. So it's great to have you on the show. Want to thank you so much, and let's stay in touch.
Thanks, Carrie. It was great being on your show.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and have a great night. Take care. Bye-bye. Snowden, yeah. Snowden mentions Palantir on this thing, and he's doing that a few times, talking about it being sort of the next step from prison, what was called PRISM, if you recall. And I have that highlighted. I actually am going to put that on the screen here. There's a chart that shows, the various companies, and I wrote an article about this, but people can look at that article if you are interested while you're sort of, and I put a picture of a goldfish bowl, because this is really what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a deep state kind of situation and a surveillance state, which is in essence what all these softwares or are working towards. And in essence, they have become an AI. Now, calling them by separate names is kind of an interesting way to go. I see that you'd sold software. Do you have any background or have you done any investigations that involve the artificial intelligence linked to all of this tracking software?
Yeah, so I've done a lot in the web in terms of AI software, and one of the founders of Dyncorp is a guy named Pug Whitaker, and he was the mastermind, the financial mastermind behind the Enron financial pyramid. And so I've sold the software that actually does the semantic analysis of all the phone conversations the brokers had and broke the case with that semantic software. So I have a lot of that forensic analysis type software.
Okay, that's great. What is it called? Is there a name?
Yeah, it was Autonomy software sold by Hewlett Packard.
Wow, right.
It's an interesting story, actually, because let's say, these were energy traders, and the SEC would require you to record every conversation you had with a potential purchaser of energy, let's say. And people are buying like, okay, I'm going to buy 200 gigawatts, for the next 3 months, and I'm the energy company of Oklahoma. So that's the conversation that's being recorded. And these brokers are saying rawhide all the time, rawhide, And so normally, like if we were so what they did is the defense handed over like 2 million documents and 2 million conversations, audio conversations. They converted it to text, and then they ran it through the semantic analysis, and they saw these rawhides, and then they came back 2 days later and said, "What's rawhide?" And that broke the case, because if we were in this, let's say, saddle business, we would probably say rawhide all the time. But when you're trading in energy, rawhide is a very unusual word to come up to, to be the 30 most frequent word. And that was one of the shell organizations. That was one of the shell trading companies that basically was a part of the financial pyramid. And then the other 30 or 40 that Pug Whitaker created came out right away. It was all the daughters' names of all the board of directors. They all just plopped out, and the whole thing collapsed. The Enron defense collapsed completely when they knew that, oh man, they know all of our shell companies. So it's a good story for HP Autonomy.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've had this background, you know what you're looking at. Are you using this type of thing then to help you in your sort of search to link up all of these players with, in essence, this organ donor, forced organ donor type stuff, peers, child trafficking, sex slaves, etc.?
Well, my group of contributors is a very on-the-cheap version of HP Autonomy or Planeteer.
Okay.
We connect the dots the old-fashioned way with yarn and string, like they used to do with your UCLA person. The old yarn Gantt charts they used to do.
Sure.
With the pins and the yarn. And it's amazing. The human mind still is an amazing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and tonight I have a fascinating guest. His name is George Webb, or at least that's his internet name. I think it's part of his whole name. And he's doing a very interesting project on YouTube that someone brought to my attention. Very glad that they did. So I've gotten in touch with him, and he's here with me tonight. And we do have him on the phone, so we won't be able to see his face, but I'm going to show you his, his face on the banner here, and I'll just put that up as I'm talking, so that you can, see more or less who's talking. And let's see, George, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, you're a little quiet, so I don't know if you have volume at your end. I'm going to turn you up over here a little bit and see if that helps. So we've got a number of viewers already, and I'm sure they're going to start showing up, as the show progresses. So, and people get the heads up that we are going live now. So it is a wonderful project that you're doing, and it does touch a lot of areas that I have researched and that people, of course, follow Camelot know about, and connecting the dots in some of the areas where perhaps they don't know all that much about. And so welcome.
It's just great to be on your show, and I watched a couple of your videos. I haven't been on your show, a subscriber before, but I am now.
Okay, well, that's good. 3 brownie points for that. And no, it's great when people will subscribe, because obviously, that looks good, makes us look good on YouTube, and we're always trying to get more and more people to pay attention to what we're doing. Obviously, that's what it's all for. It's for the people. So your investigations began with what appeared to be the missing CEO of the Clinton Foundation, Braverman, and it does appear that someone at least tweeted that he was, I guess, alive and well or something, sometime not that long ago. And I wonder if you could go over the saga of how this whole thing kind of came to be, and how you landed on doing this wonderful, I forget the name of the software program you're using, but talk about that as well.
Well, so that's a recent development. I started, we all lived through the election of 2016, and we remember the DNC leaks and Seth Rich, dying mysteriously, and then the 3 founders of WikiLeaks all kind of dying in a row, and then all the Podesta emails coming out. And we were looking to see if Braverman, this ex-CEO, there was an article written on the 23rd or so of October, when the last WikiLeaks guy died. There was this article that came out and said the secret to the Clinton Foundation unlocking the whole story is this Eric Braverman. And the next day, after Gavin McFadden died, who is kind of the founder of WikiLeaks in London, there was a story that he ran to the Russian consulate in New York. And it was kind of one of those alternate media, wasn't really covered in who knew if it was true or not. Well, I really wasn't, it was an interesting story, but I really didn't go anywhere with it. But then on the 2nd of November, a story came out in True Pundit. I don't know if you remember, but the story broke about the 650,000 emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop broke.
Right.
And the police chief, a guy named Boyce, Robert Boyce, is 40-year. He's kind of the gruff voice of, NYPD. He's the big media name, chief of detectives, 40th Exercise, 1984, which was started by Ollie North and George Bush in the Reagan administration, which was this: what if the United States revolted? And how would we respond? How would we use the FBI, the CIA, and the armed forces to put down a revolt? So this idea of collecting every piece of information we can to a common location like Bluffdale, Utah right now, that's obviously what this is. So Promise Software was an interesting idea because I liken Promise software to help people just understand it. It's kind of like your phone with a banking application on it. And you are going to be able to see maybe 10 different accounts in your banking application on your phone. You're going to be able to see deposits, and you're going to be able to see withdrawals and so forth. But instead of it just being your personal accounts, what the CIA did was they stole the software. Bill Weld of, in Massachusetts was at the Department of Justice, the guy who was just running for vice president of the Green Party, or the Libertarian Party. They sold the software to Saudi Arabia, they sold it to Russia, they sold it to Canada, they sold it to MI6, they sold it all over the world, and its Promise stood for Prosecutors Management Information System. So basically, what they had was, if there was an investigation, let's say in England, and they were investigating, let's say, the Beatles for tax evasion, the Promise software had a back door in it so that the CIA could look into what the MI6 was investigating and then say, oh, they're investigating the Beatles. We can beat them to the punch and go to the Beatles and get a bribe or a kickback from them before MI6 does. We can keep up on the whole world this way through this back door and this Promise software, if that makes sense. Promise was this kind of Trojan horse that they gave all the intelligence, and prosecutors around the world.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
And you have all the, and then the reporter, and I can't remember his name right off the bat, that was killed for reporting this.
Danny Casolaro, I think.
There you go, Danny Casolaro. And a lot of my work follows in the bloody footprints of these dead reporters. But anyway, that was the whole idea behind Promise. Well, the follow-on to that is this Planeteer with this Peter Thiel, the guy who spoke, the gay guy who was with Trump, and he spoke at the Republican convention and so forth. And he's kind of a CIA guy, and he is trying to push this same thing: connections, connect the dots, money, how to solve money laundering problems. For instance, if you're trying to move $100 million, you don't want to move it through just one international transfer, because it's like a elephant going through a python. It's very easy to see. So what they do is they shard it into 10 different transactions, 10 different $10 million ones, and through 10 different banks. Well, that's something that Planeteer could pick up right off the bat. But so local law enforcement uses this, state law enforcement, federal investigative agencies. There's about 30 federal agencies that have investigative agencies. They're all using this. Well, it's the same thing again. There's a backdoor built into these things so that the CIA can look, and Dyncorp can look right in. Dyncorp manages all this. They have the federal contract for managing all this.
Okay, you're saying that Dyncorp links to, I believe that the pronunciation is Palantir, correct?
Palantir. Sometimes I say Planeteer. Palantir is correct.
Yeah, I could have been called Planeteer for what it's really doing, but and Snowden on a recent interview that he did, it was a roundtable really with Noam Chomsky and I guess it was the journalist who's uncovered the whole Snowden thing.
For years on the NYPD, he came out and said, hey, on this server, there's about 500,000 classified emails out of 650,000. There's child exploitation, there's child trafficking, there's pay to play, there's obstruction of justice, there's perjury, there's all these things on this laptop. So that was the True Pundit article. So at that point, I'm like, okay, if this is true, then the CEO is running for a good reason. There's something more to this story. So that's when I start following him. And that was probably about day 8 or 9. So I started the series and I called it, Where is Eric Braverman? And that was about day 8. And I followed him until, just like you mentioned, just until very recently, until about day 89 or 90, when he finally surfaced and he's been announced as the new CEO of Eric Schmidt's from Google, his foundation, the Google Foundation. Now, we haven't seen him. He's supposed to teach tomorrow at Yale. He teaches at the Jackson School of Government in New Haven at Yale. So tomorrow no one's ever has seen him since that day he went to the embassy. So tomorrow we'll know. So that's kind of what the story in a nutshell. Okay,
so we're right at the cutting edge right here on the show today, which is a lot of fun. So that'll be very interesting, and obviously people are going to have to pay attention to your YouTube channel, among other things, and possibly even some people in the news might have picked up on this sort of discrepancy or whatever it is. Maybe it'll be reported other places. I'm sure you'll be on the story. So we will be very curious whether he does in fact show up in person, and of course in my world, and not a clone. But so as far as you getting into this, your background, I put it on my website. It's not your traditional sort of journalist background. You're more of a software sales guy. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. I'm just a citizen journalist. No journalist training. I went to the Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and one thing we did learn was how to use a library. They would say, okay, here are the 5 courses or 5 companies we're going to analyze. Now go get their annual reports out of the library and come back and tell us what you think we should do for those 5 companies. And you'd have a team of 2 and a team of 4, but you spend all this time in the library, and this iterative process of presenting to your small team, and then to the other groups in the class, and then they would give you all kinds of ideas you never thought of, and you go, oh my, what a great idea. And that is the same thing that I put into this open media research. I put out ideas, and then I have this cadre of fantastic researchers that give me ideas and tell me, no, that's not right. If I make a mistake, and it's kind of this great kind of call and response method of doing internet research. It's extremely powerful.
It is, and I have to say that it's great that you use this. Is it called Trulo or something like that? What's the name of the software?
There is a way to storyboard anything called Trello.
Okay.
And if you think of it like solitaire, and you make cards, so you can make cards, could be news articles. And so let's say we're talking about a company where the investigation led to, which is this Dyncorp.
Yep.
Which is a company that is about the 22nd largest defense contractor as far as budget that we know about, but also manages the black budget, the hidden budget, the $6.7 trillion missing in the Department of Defense budget. They manage that budget. And so you can basically put these, it's kind of like pieces of the puzzle. You put the pieces of the puzzle together on this Trello, and then you can kind of, just like you would play solitaire, you match things up, and then eventually the solution kind of comes out.
Right, but it does echo, I did go to UCLA Graduate School of Management executive program. And I did it back in the day when I was trying to get a sort of business piece to complement my my creative side that went into the entertainment industry. And I know that they have these wonderful packages, but they usually cost a huge amount of money that can triangulate relationships. And this is what this reminds me of. In other words, the lines that are drawn between the individuals, and it's a great tool, and it's obviously a tool that's used, that's very sophisticated, that's used by major corporations, used, I'm sure, by sort of the powers that be, and people. In fact, I'm sure it's part of the AI component that is in essence called, I think it's called main core. I wrote an article recently incorporating that link. Have you heard of that?
I haven't, but it sounds a lot like Peter Thiel's Palantir software that draws relationships and is used kind of in, Peter Thiel from PayPal, and now, he spoke at the Republican convention, and similar type of thing that maps these unknown or hidden relationships in order to show, what true relationships are. But I haven't heard the main core, no.
Okay, it's actually main course, C-O-R-E, I think it is. I'll pull it up. It's in essence, I guess, a precursor to what some people might call maybe echelon. It's the gigantic servers that were collecting data even in the early days and so on. I don't even know what it's called now. Maybe it's even part of Mother, which is the nano satellite grid that's got a main location that's kind of like it's like Skynet in the Terminator movie series, but in essence, it's a centralization place. Some people may say it's actually the location, for example, in Utah, that the NSA has taken over and built major server farms and that kind of thing. But at any rate, so
Utah,
yeah. So when they can do this, they can not just know that you're connected to so-and-so, to so-and-so, to so-and-so, but they can know, like what you're doing, which is connecting the dots as to how people are connected and through what organizations and what those organizations may be involved in, and the major players in the organizations. It's just a whole diagram of all of that, and is very useful. Obviously, it's supposed to also, it does hark back to what Promise software was capable of. And then the back doors were actually put in by Michael Riconosciuto, as you may know, and he's in jail and has been in jail for many, many years, up on charges having to do with actually, I guess, drug trafficking of some kind, but he's much more deeply down the rabbit hole than that, and was involved in weapons, sales and biotech, which is the Morongo Indian Reservation and all of that. So I'm assuming that you know your Promise software story well, because you've got it highlighted on in a number of places, and how it links up to maybe Blackwater. And I was going to ask you how Blackwater links up to Dyncorp.
Well, so I pulled up Main Core while you were speaking, and it's a code name, and so that's kind of what threw me. And it kind of started in the 80s, and I see here Rex 84, which was ready